Hello Lymanshire, it is Wednesday, Fizzuary 15th. Now, like I said last time, it is very difficult for me to separate religion and morality, but this is actually one of the subjects that I really like talking about because for me, it's a religious thing, but I think these are just a bunch of good things that everybody should live by regardless of their religious preference. We are going to be talking about the teachings of the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits, also known as Ignatian spirituality, and anything with the name Loyola attached to it. It was started by St. Ignatius of Loyola at the beginning of the Renaissance. Now, St. Ignatius, before he was saintly, was very much the opposite. He was a soldier and a ladies' man and very taken with the vanities of the world. He was said to have been seen very frequently with a cuirass and a chainmail suit because he just wanted to fight people all the time. And he very much enjoyed reading stories of adventure and chivalry. Not the kind of person that you'd expect to become a saint, but you know, nobody really is. So anyway, St. Ignatius was injured while he was fighting and was forced to be bedridden for a very long time while he was recovering. And he didn't really have anything to read in the process except for the Bible and stories of other saints. And as anyone who's ever had to spend time bedridden knows, he was super bored. There was no TV, there was no music, there was no radio, there was nothing that we would do to entertain ourselves while we were that bored. All he had was books. So of course he read these religious books and he thought, wow, this is amazing. I could do this. So he completely gave himself over to religion and became incredibly ascetic in response. He let his fingernails grow, he would fast, he wouldn't cut his hair, he wanted to do everything the opposite of what he had been doing his whole life. And eventually he realized that that wasn't really the best way to go about it. So he came up with a bunch of ideas about religious moderation and the way people should actually practice sacrifice and all that, and got a bunch of his friends together and formed the Society of Jesus. I realize that was a very short version of this story, and I'm sorry, it's a very interesting story and I would recommend that everybody read it if they're interested. So anyway, more about the society. There are several things that they really emphasize that are very different from a lot of other religious societies that I've seen. They do emphasize a freedom from material needs, and Jesuit priests do in fact have to give up most of their material possessions, but when you practice Ignatian spirituality in your own life, it's mostly about making reasonable sacrifices. It's not about like completely giving up everything. It's about giving up things that you really just don't need. This stems out of the Jesuit idea of self-examination, which is something that I have found to be very, very helpful. There's this prayer that Jesuits do every day called the Examen, and basically it starts with you just reflecting on any time that you felt God in the day, which is just something that I think is very important to reflect on. And then you start thinking about everything that you're grateful for and giving thanks for the things that are actually good in your life. And I think that's a great way to start the prayer, just remembering, hey, God, you're pretty awesome. And then remembering, hey, there are lots of good things in my life. The bulk of the prayer actually involves reflecting on everything you did throughout the day and pondering virtually every step of it, which can take some time, but I've found that it becomes very beneficial. You start realizing things that happened throughout your day that you didn't even realize happened when they did. And once you've gone through that whole process, you start to think about things about your day that didn't go so well. Some people call these sins, some people call them bad decisions, some people just call them, that sucked. But either way, it's important for you to realize things about your day that didn't quite live up to your expectations. Because the next step is really just making a conscious decision to do better tomorrow. It's not about beating yourself up for being bad. It's mostly about figuring out a way that you can always make yourself better, which I think is an important thing to strive for personally. And one of the things that I've discovered in this process is that I always end up having so many more things to be grateful for than to be upset about, which is one of the fundamental tenets of Ignatian spirituality, just being joyful, being happy, and embracing life for being good, because you have one life. And there's no point in spending it being upset with yourself. And I honestly don't think that you have to be Christian or even religious to understand that, which is why learning about Ignatian spirituality did so much for me. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more, that you read the Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, because it says everything in much more detail and much better than I ever really could. So definitely read that. Now, it was recently pointed out to me that most of my K-pop songs of the day have been girls, and that's just because I don't usually like a lot of the boy stuff. It tends to be more R&B, but I would like to give you a more objective and broad experience, so I'm trying to change that. Therefore, your song of the day is one that I don't really know what to make of, especially if you watch the music video, but it's called This Is War by M. Black. So I hope you enjoy it, and with that, I will see you tomorrow.